The planet Olympus Prime was a graveyard of ambition. Below the permanent, lightning-scarred cloud deck, the world was a jagged wasteland of obsidian and acid rain. But above the storm, in the eternal golden light of the upper atmosphere, drifted the kingdom of the High Ones. To the Church of the Ascended, an intergalactic religion spanning a dozen alien worlds, this was the literal afterlife. They believed that when the Great Cycle ended millions of years ago, the most virtuous souls were taken to this floating paradise to live in eternal bliss. For generations the Church had sent pilgrim fleets to attempt a landing. None returned. The kingdom was defended by the Seraphim, a legion of winged, autonomous hardlight constructs that vaporized anything that didn't possess the mark of the divine. Captain Silas, the Hook, Vane didn't believe in the mark of the divine. He believed in high-explosive armor-piercing rounds and the fact that anything built by gods usually had a very expensive fuse box somewhere. Silas was a relic hunter, a man who treated the temples of the precursors like a bank vault with an attitude problem. He had been hired by High Disciple Horus, a four-armed, blue-skinned fanatic who had promised Silas a mountain of credits if he could get him through the pearly gates. "We are approaching the threshold of judgment, Captain," Horus shouted over the roar of the shuttle's engines. He was draped in ceremonial silks, his four hands clasped in a nervous prayer. "Prepare your spirit. The seraphim will weigh our souls against the golden feather of truth. Only those without sin may enter the garden." Silas spat a bit of tobacco into a disposal bin and checked the charge on his rail rifle. "Hate to break it to you, Horus, but my soul is currently in collections. If those chrome birds want to weigh something, they can weigh the lead I'm about to put in their sensors. Shields up. We're breaching the perimeter." The assault was a symphony of chaos. As the debt collector broke the cloud layer into the golden sunlight, the kingdom of heaven appeared, a breathtaking expanse of white marble spires, suspended rivers and lush, green parks that defied gravity. It was beautiful. It was serene. And it immediately tried to kill them. 6 seraphim droids detached from the underside of a floating plaza, their wings of blue plasma unfurling as they launched streaks of searing white light. "They are singing the song of purification," Horus wailed, ducking behind a bulkhead. "That's not a song, that's a target lock." Silas roared, yanking the shuttle into a steep dive. "Gunners, fire at will. Aim for the joints." The battle through the skydocks of the kingdom was a blur of fire and ivory dust. The human mercenaries didn't fight like pilgrims. They fought like street brawlers. They used the sacred architecture as cover, bouncing grenades off the marble statues of long-dead figures and using harpoons to tether the agile seraphim. Slowly, painfully, they fought their way to the main gate, a massive shimmering archway of gold and glass that sat at the end of a bridge made of solid light. The seraphim suddenly stopped their attack, hovering in a wide circle around the human shuttle. A deep, resonant voice, the kind that makes your ribcage vibrate, boomed from the archway. It spoke in the elder tongue, the language the Church believed was the fundamental code of the soul. "Halt, traveler. Provide clearance for entry into the ascended realm. Only the chosen may pass. All others are subject to permanent eviction." Horus fell to his knees, his forehead touching the deck plates. "The great judge. It is asking for our records. Captain, give it the holy scrolls. Show it the charity of our people." Silas stepped off the shuttle's ramp, his heavy boots clanking on the light bridge. He looked at the great judge, a massive rotating holographic eye that scanned him with a thin red beam. Silas didn't pull out a scroll. He looked at the terminal beside the gate. It wasn't an altar. It was a card reader. Beside the reader, partially obscured by a creeping vine of genetically modified roses, was a small, oxidized brass plaque. Silas wiped away the grime with a gloved thumb. His eyes widened. It wasn't written in a celestial cipher. It was written in English. "Alpha Centauri Residential Condominium Phase 4-inch where the 1% live forever. Unauthorized trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Management reserves the right to use lethal force." "You've got to be kidding me," Silas whispered. He looked up at the pearly gates. He saw the small logo etched into the glass, a stylized A wrapped in a laurel of olive branches. The logo of Ethel Life Corp., the 25th century's most infamous luxury real estate developer. "Captain?" Horus whispered, his voice trembling. "What does the judge say? Are we redeemed?" "It's not a judge, Horus," Silas said, a cynical grin spreading across his face. "It's a security guard. And we're not sinners. We're just non-residents." He looked at the card reader. It was ancient, But the Etholife tech was the foundation of half the modern human security systems. Silas reached into his tactical vest and pulled out a cracked, black plastic card he'd salvaged from a high-end wreckage 3 systems back. It was an Executive Black Class Life Member card. He kept it because the magnetic strip was still active, thinking it might be worth a few credits. He slid the card through the reader. The red beam turned green. The massive golden glass gates didn't open with a celestial fanfare. They hissed with the sound of luxury-grade sliding door motors. "Welcome home, Director Vane," the great judge announced, its voice suddenly losing its booming divinity and becoming the smooth, sycophantic tone of a high-end AI concierge. "We apologize for the delay in security clearance. The gardens have been pruned, and the infinity pool is at a perfect 28 degrees Celsius. Would you like me to notify the other residents of your arrival?" "No, keep it quiet," Silas said, stepping through the gates. "We're here for an early checkout." Oris followed him, stumbling into the city with his jaw hanging open. "Director? You are a high one? You are a reincarnation of the First Lords." "Not exactly, Oris," Silas said, walking down a path made of crushed diamonds. "I just found a rich guy's wallet in a trash can. Welcome to the Kingdom of Heaven. Mind the statues." The interior of the city was a masterpiece of exclusion. Every park was designed for maximum privacy. Every fountain was a work of art meant to be seen by only a handful of eyes. They walked past open-air cafes where the tables were still set with fine porcelain, and the wine in the glasses had long since turned to dust. They found the high ones in the Temple of Eternal Rest, which turned out to be the main clubhouse. They weren't sitting on thrones. They were lying on high-end loungers around an infinity pool that looked out over the edge of the floating city. There were hundreds of them, their bodies preserved by the sterile, automated environment, dressed in silks that cost more than a starship. Some held cocktail glasses. Others held the hands of their loved ones. They all had the same peaceful, arrogant expressions on their faces. They hadn't died in a cosmic war. They hadn't transcended the universe. They had just stayed here. When the rest of humanity was facing the collapse of the first cycle, when the stars were dying and the warp gates were failing, these people had taken their wealth, moved to a floating fortress above a storm and closed the gate behind them. They had lived in their private paradise until the automated systems ran out of supplies, or the boredom finally became too much to bear. Oris stood at the edge of the pool, looking at a skeleton wearing a diamond-encrusted robe. He picked up a discarded tablet that had fallen from the god's hand. The screen flickered to life, showing a series of messages from 10 million years ago. "Is the evacuation fleet still coming?" the message read. "The peasants are rioting at the spaceport. Tell security to double the lethal perimeter. I don't care if they're starving. This is a private residence. Lord Harrison, CEO of Etholife." Oris slumped against a white marble pillar. His Kingdom of Heaven was a gated community for billionaires who had left the rest of their species to burn while they played tennis above the clouds. The mark of the divine was just a high credit score. "They weren't gods," Oris whispered, his 4 eyes wet with tears. "They were just selfish." "Always have been," Silas said, walking over to the main terminal in the clubhouse. He wasn't interested in the wine or the silk. He was looking for the life seed, the technology the church believed could restart dead worlds. He found it in the basement. It wasn't a magical orb of creation. It was the Alpha Centauri climate control and terraforming array. It was the system that kept the city floating and the gardens green. It was a piece of industrial hardware, built to last for eternity, designed to make sure the high ones never had to experience a rainy day. Silas tapped into the main controls. "Well, Oris, your gods aren't using this anymore. I think it's time we shared the paradise with the people down in the mud." He initiated the descent protocol. The massive city groaned as its anti-gravity engines began to tilt. The ivory spires and hanging gardens started to descend through the purple clouds. For the first time in millions of years, the Kingdom of Heaven was returning to the world below. As the city broke through the cloud deck, the mercenaries and the disillusioned priests stood on the balconies, watching the light return to the dark wasteland. The terraforming rays of the city began to fire, neutralizing the acid rain and stabilizing the obsidian ground. The paradise wasn't a reward for the virtuous, it was a tool for the living. Humanity had proven the ultimate relic hunter truth. The galaxy is full of heavens and kingdoms built by those who thought they were better than the rest. They built walls of gold and gates of glass to keep the universe at bay. But there is no gate a human can't pick and no god we can't evict once we find their paperwork. We aren't the children of the gods. We're the heirs to their gated communities. And we're finally opening the gates. This has been Apex Sci-Fi. The paradise is open. The bill is paid. That if you enjoyed this exclusive look into the home of the gods, hit that like button. Comment below. If you could build a private paradise above the clouds, what's the one thing you'd make sure to keep out? Subscribe for the next story in the Relic Hunters saga, the Titan's Tools. The gates are open. Welcome home.